What is good? What is good? What is good? I am Damo, the political plug. This is the Chop Up Show. I'd like to thank all y'all for coming and joining us on this Thursday evening. I'm here with my dog since high school, day one. Toya G. What's good with you, big dog?
What's going on, political plug? I'm feeling good, feeling great. It's getting cold outside. We was just talking about how it's kind of cooling off a little bit. Hopefully,
Just
where
a little
y'all at,
bit.
we it's doing it in SoCal, so we know it got to be doing it where y'all at. So the fall is here. I think. Well, first of all, I do have to say this. I have a question to ask you, plug. Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Do you remember the 21st day of September?
Of September.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna get up there for you tonight, but I had to put that out there for free. Shout out to the Earth, the Wind, and that fire. But also, I think tomorrow is the official day of fall, so this is the last day of summer. Hope you enjoyed yourself. Buckle in because we in that time. But I'm
Right.
grateful to be with Top Nation as usual. Grateful to be with you, and the conversation we having tonight is one of my faves. So I'm looking forward to it specifically.
Yeah, it's time to do it. Shout out to Andrea Jones in the chat, Miss Ma'am in the chat. Y'all make sure y'all say what's up as y'all come in here. And also, we want to hear from y'all, right? Because like this is a place where we like dissent, we like pushback, we like to, you know what I'm saying. We're debaters, so we cool with that. But I think it's time we need to just go ahead and jump right into this one, just flat out. How we got to this conversation, I think, is a good place for us to start. Uh, Me myself, as y'all can see what the title is, we talking about the N word. And to be honest, I think people get it wrong. A lot of really smart people get the N word wrong. But before we go into that, how did we get here? Uh, I'm actually been criticized a lot, and I'm gonna let Toya kind of speak on it herself. But me personally, the chop up has been criticized a little bit, but me personally, I get criticized a lot for my use of the N word. Like it's one of my favorite words. I think it has a lot of meaning, a lot of impact, as we're gonna discuss. But when people hear me speaking my speech, and then it's like, and then they hear it's nigga this, nigga that, they be like, damn, bro, like what you saying is so, it sound good, it's impactful, it's intelligent, but you keep, like, every time you use the N word, you lose credibility with me. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. You feel me? I was recently on Conscious Lee's channel because for some reason
Shout out to
people
Lee.
yeah, so for some reason people think we distancing ourselves from Lee since he ain't on the platform. And it's like, yeah, nah, like y'all have no idea what you talking about. But I
Hello.
was on Lee's platform, and we were talking about the system, the brick gate as it's being called. And I was like, yo,
Bro.
this how niggas feel about Roe, right? This how niggas feel about Kevin Samuels. Niggas think this, niggas think that. And a sister commented and was like, can we stop using the N word so much, right? And I guess I used it so much that somebody was even like, uh, he used it that many times. Is he trying to be cool or something? As if it was like a performance, right? So I get a lot of criticism, but for how often I deploy it, and I'll admit I do use it a bit gratuitously. But what about you, Toya? What's been your experience with that?
I mean, my experience with it has been, I mean, largely in relationship to the show, just kind of seeing the comments we get just in general. Like, somebody had made some comments about, when we were talking about politics and Joe Biden and Donald Trump and who was going to win the election. We talked and spoke in terms of niggas in a bunch of different tenses, which I think, have people wondering when we say niggas, which niggas do we mean? Like, is it like who do we mean? What do we mean by niggas or whatever? So their comments will have niggas in quotes and just be really weird about our use of it. And then I think there are also moments where I feel like people feel like my use of nigga undermines my femininity. You know what I'm saying? In whatever ways, and you know what I'm saying. It's just like it just becomes very interesting, coded conversations, always kind of in the backdrop of it. And I also feel like those comments kind of prick me interestingly because I think nigga was my first and still to this day probably only expletive profane word. I'm putting air quotes around that I can say around my mama and get off real easy. You know what I'm saying? So I'm protective about nigga. You know what I'm saying? When you try to take that away from me,
Yeah.
I feel like you take a bridge builder that signifies my adulthood. It signifies my maturation, and it's something that I feel like communally, and we'll get into all of the ways that we share that term, has kind of framed and shaped how we've been able to share understandings. That one word depending on inflection, is effective
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah,
Like
very,
it just depending
very.
on how you say it, you know what I'm saying. So it's just
Yeah.
been able to mediate and to communicate and to direct and orient conversation and communication so many times that I feel like my relationship to it is because I got to shout out the University of Oklahoma in particular. The debate team there, where we had the plug and we had Conscious Lee making arguments
Shout out to the boy.
about,
She.
you know what I'm saying, the understanding of the word, and that also blew open my mind. And so I wanted to, I called you like, hey, can we just talk about this real quick? Like, it's a lot of stuff going on. We're gonna get to a lot of it. I think we're gonna end up going live on Monday, so y'all stay tuned for that.
Because we
But
got some other things that we want to discuss Monday.
other
But
things we
yeah.
want to talk about that we want to put on the radar too. But I just was like, can we, like, so it just, that's my relationship to it. It's just I really feel like it's an important signifier that in the right hands and with the right understanding can really
Right.
be a more redeemable orientation toward the world around us, just as a word in our lexicon.
And I think that was what was crazy. And when y'all come in here, y'all let us know how y'all feel. Like Miss Ma'am already put in the chat that people be
Mm-hmm.
selectively literal when it comes to it, for sure. We're gonna talk about that. But what was crazy was after I had already been criticized that same day on Lee's channel for my use of the word, Toya hit me up like, yo, like I kind of got something I want to run by you. You know what I'm saying about the usage of the N word, right? And to me, I'm thinking like, shit, Toya must be like, all right, maybe we got to pull back or whatever. But she like, hey, we need to attack this shit. We need to, you know what I'm saying? Like, we need to really go at niggas' heads because like they think that like when we deploying it, it's out of ignorance, right? And it's out of like some like misguided attempt at
Or
reclaiming
even a
blackness.
lazy approach
Right, a
to
lazy approach.
really
Yeah.
communicating or whatever. Especially, I think it really confuses people when we be like, man, so niggas don't really understand, and we're talking about people writ large. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? Like, I can understand why it's like, but there's an explanation for that, and we've taken the time to kind of peel back some of the layers that justify the
The
underpinnings of
usage,
why we say
right?
what we say.
And
Yeah.
and, and, and I think it's not even a justification. I feel like I think we've reached a point to where there's positive, like there's a benefit to deploying the language. But what's important though, before we kind of get into that justification, is understanding why people feel the way that they do. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to undermine or discredit the arguments against the term based on like our experiences, things that we've endured, etc. So it's a few things that I want to get clear, before we like really just start going hard in like our justifications and why it matters to us. Is
Right.
we want to like, because it's not like these people aren't our enemies, right? Like the people that's like I'm not for the N word. Like when y'all hear us make our argument, please believe that we are not chastising these people. You feel me? Because there are certain limitations, and it's to our justification. But I think what's important is to also recognize where the value lies. So the first thing, when we start talking about where the criticism comes from, is why, like, why people don't really fuck with the term. And I think it's the first one is really the most obvious, and that's like it comes from slavery, right? Like it
Mm-hmm.
comes from the dehumanization of black people. It comes from an attempt to rob them of their subjectivity. Let me go ahead and pull up a little bit of scholarship for y'all. Now y'all getting a sneak peek into what like debate evidence and arguments look like. This is literally a debate evidence. This is some shit I read how many ever years ago. But it helps us kind of understand. Go ahead.
I was gonna say shout out to Lorine who pulled up for this conversation. Said they've been waiting on the conversation. So us peeling back these layers, you know what I'm saying? Hopefully it's gonna be good for some folk, whether you use the word or not, whether you have a friendly relationship with the word or not. Just this understanding, this deeper understanding is all we trying to just pass out a little bit. That's it. Also, well, nah, I'll slide that in eventually. Go ahead and drop that knowledge up. Get into the Ev, bro.
Yes, yes, yes. So get into the evidence. Get into the evidence. There's a very obvious reason as to why we shouldn't rock with the N word. And as we get deeper into the episode, we actually gonna start using the term nigga. But as we talk about the pushback to the term, we're gonna use the term N-word out of respect for those individuals, because we're gonna step all over their sensibilities later, but respectfully, we want to make sure that their argument is heard, because it's a valid one, right? So when we look at the etymology of the term nigger, how it got to the United States, as we see here, Professor of English Dr. Ronald Judy explains that according to the Oxford English Dictionary, nigger belongs to the French negre, which, like its Spanish cognate negro, was used in early modern time to designate black people. It appears to have come into the English through the Dutch sometime in the 16th century, and by the 17th century, it appeared in variant forms like nigger, neger, negre, etc. So this is all saying that nigger at that time, 15th, 16th century, only meant it was black, right? It was for the Latin cognate of black. However, in its earliest known literary reference in 1587, it's already associated with slavery. And by the time it reaches the Virginia colony, it simply designates black people as slave labor. So as we understand it, right, the etymology of nigger in terms of slave culture, chattel slavery, transatlantic slave trade, there is a clear connection between that term and designating enslaved Africans slave labor. That's valid, right? So like when people say like, yeah, I mean, when people say that, you know, where does the term come from as a part of their argument, like that's a good question, and this is also helps us understand why white people can't say the term, because when it got to their lexicon, when it got to their verbiage, it only meant slave labor, right?
And so, this is also the reason why some people, the tiebreaker was like, are your ancestors slaves? Like, you know what I'm saying? Is that even in proximity to your bloodline? You know what I'm saying? Or some people are just like, do you have 4 black grandparents? If not, you know what I'm saying? That might disqualify you from saying the word, right? But like it depends on who you talk to. And I think one of the things the plug kind of wanted to make clear, like who can and can't say it, is almost an entirely separate conversation.
Entirely different conversation, yeah.
Its own baggage, its own things to kind of, you know, unpack and connect for all intents and purposes. So that's not really what we're getting at. But that explanation of its connections to slavery and why people tend to move away from it, and particularly are defensive of it when white people want to use it, is because of its, you know, the baggage that it has through chattel slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. Right. No doubt about that.
Right. And so while there are very important, valid conversations to be had about who can use it, when people bring up the origins of it, it's no doubt that in American English, when the term nigger was introduced into their lexicon, or excuse me, the N-word was introduced into their lexicon, it only meant slave labor. That's something that we not gonna deny, right? So that's the argument as it pertains to its origins. Now, a lot of smart people have very good arguments against why we should use the term, origin being one of them. But somebody else who I think that makes a pretty valid argument, right? Because I was looking around for the episode to be like, okay, who makes the good argument about this, right? And one person that I felt like made a pretty good argument was Roland Martin. Roland Martin. So let me get this pulled up so we could play this here. Roland Martin's position, and this is kind of old. It was on the Breakfast Club. But we're gonna see how Roland feels here, his position. And then, you know, Charlemagne and them don't, you know, we not gonna put any burden on them for them to say anything like really of note as it relates to this conversation. But you know, they provide good entertainment value while the intelligent brother is speaking. So let's go ahead and take a listen.
It's like people get mad at me because I refuse to let people use the N-word at me on my social media. I'm like, no. First of all, how you call yourself conscious, but you're using language of the oppressor? I'm confused.
I'm trying not to, Roland.
No, but it's not that hard. It's not that hard.
It's not.
And so
it's only hard when you're talking about actual N-words.
No, it's not hard.
Because sometimes you see some stuff. And
no, it's not. Because you could say that's bullshit. What's the difference?
Don't hit as hard.
This punk ass. No, yes it does. Yes it does.
Say F-boy.
Just it could be that, or look, or when you see somebody. If I see you, no, you're gonna say, "What is up, my?" No, my brother is far more affirming.
Yeah,
But again, that is retraining one's mind. Look, I said the N word for a long time. I haven't said it in 30 plus years because I trained myself to say no.
We gotta stop using the ninja word in our language because there's no ROI on the investment of that word. It gets us back nothing good. Outside of all that it already represents negative, if I call you king or queen or brother or sister, there's some ROI of self-elevation in that.
So Jay Morrison, we don't really care what he got to add. You know
like,
what I'm saying to that? Like Jay Morrison is a known scammer. You feel me? Like the Tulsa real estate fund. That's a whole other conversation to have. But anyway, but Roland Martin's argument though, right? Like we hear these things about there's more affirming language to use, right? He's saying that we need to kind of what was it? Like I guess like decolonize is one way.
Yeah, deprogram ourselves.
Yeah. Which I feel like that. I'm gonna talk about that. I'm gonna talk about what that deprogramming really look like. But these are valid arguments, right? Like these you wouldn't say that this is something that you would consider like anti-black or you know what I'm saying? Like,
not at all. And the one thing I vehemently agree with him about for sure that he said was that he does not want to be approached and engaged that way. So I am careful about if somebody's like, don't call me that. You 1000% got it, right? I don't think anything that we're about to say or explain is an insistence that you be called that, or that if you were like, don't call me that, that's the same thing as your pronouns or the way you would like to be referred to. If you check that shit or if you're like, that's not how I move, complete respect to that. You know what I'm saying? I can adjust, in the face of somebody saying that is not a term that I find affirming for myself. But if you don't tell me, I ain't gonna know. I'm gonna be honest with you, and I'm gonna go ahead and speak freely in the ways that I feel like align with what I know about the utility of that word and the function of it, more or less. Because it's not even about me using it and to achieve something. It's just about its kind of resonance in my vocabulary.
So that was it. So that was a valid argument, Roland. And again, this isn't to challenge, you know what I'm saying, to tear him down or anything like that. But it's something that, we want to make sure that position is heard, even though we have some rebuttals. Michael Jai White also makes some interesting arguments, and it's the nigga from Black Dynamite. You know what I'm saying? So
he's been in a ton of other things too, for sure.
Right. But definitely, Black Dynamite is one of my favorite cartoons, favorite movies. So I feel like I gotta shout him out for that. But let's listen to his argument as to why we really shouldn't be using the N word like that. Let's go.
Greatest speakers and leaders like Michael Eric Dyson will speak about how we've taken the word back, and he defended using the word, and you got to go, oh my God, like listen to the way that you can kind of rationalize that. But I mean, really, when it comes down to it, man, like you said, there's no other races that call themselves such a derogatory term.
Yeah. And
not only that, I mean, think about dog, bitch, fool, all these things that our psyche hears these words. They know where they came from. You can't tell me that you don't register it.
I've never thought about the other common phrase like dog, fool, bitch.
Yeah, like it's all these
right.
things that lull you into you being lesser. That we embrace.
That's deep.
But it is because, hey, man, I get it. There was a time not that long ago where even my grandparents or and their grandparents said to anybody who dared to get an education and look a white man in the eye.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's making valid arguments, right? You know what I mean? What his grandparents experienced, and how we look at how we internalize certain negative things. I see you kind of shaking, you feeling away about what's being said. Like, what's your initial thoughts?
Well, because one of his arguments is rooted in what other cultures do and how they don't call each other negative terms or call themselves the derogatory terms that they've been assigned. And my thing is they don't do that, but they call each other niggas. So like, I think the sensationalization of their lack of use of derogatory terms ignores the fact that they eat up Black culture, commodify everything niggas do, and now end up calling each other that. You know what I'm saying? Especially these new kids, especially when we talk about Latinx communities, when we talk about Asian communities, they good for it. You know what I'm saying? And that is, again, we don't want to delve too deep into who can say it and who can't say it, because that's a whole different conversation, and no, you can't say it. But like, let's be honest then about the stickiness of that word and how it's attached itself to other cultures, because y'all just can't stand to keep it out of your mouth, whether you're using it in a threatening term toward other people, or I've seen videos on social media of like white people arguing and calling somebody somebody a nigga. So you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not gonna sit up here and tell me that everybody else is better than us because every other group is not using derogatory terms to refer to. Like, get out of here. Like, I'm not.
They're literally using our quote unquote derogatory term to refer to themselves.
Either out of anger or frustration or out of camaraderie and friendship. They are deploying that word in ways that they shouldn't even be thinking about touching, but they do it because they love niggas. You know what I'm saying? Like, the real one.
Right. Now we'd be remiss if we didn't have the Prince of Pan-Africanism, King Kong consciousness, Dr. Umar, and allow him to shed some light from the conscious brother Pan-African perspective. Let's hear from Umar Johnson.
Be using the N-word, not even us. It is the worst word ever used to describe any people. It represents inhumanity. It represents disrespect. It represents racial inferiority. Everything that white people have ever said about us is characterized by that word. Nobody should be using it. And that's another strike against the hip hop community, because they, more than any other sector in American society, has popularized the use of the N-word. And mind you, hip hop is the most influential genre of music in the world right now. So if hip hop is the most influential genre of music in the world right now, and they're popularizing the N-word, do you know what that means? They're making it safe for the entire world of non-black people to use That's why we got teachers fighting kids calling them the N-word, because we've made non-blacks so comfortable with it by making people think it's okay to use it. It's never okay to use it.
So, and again, we're gonna get deeper into the arguments, right? And it's like, this is another common argument that we hear, is this making other people comfortable using the word, right? And I think that it's just that's a little bit misguided, right? It's a valid argument on face value. Like, if you just look at it from hip hop being a place of where popular culture come from, right? Like, hip hop is the face of popular culture right now. We would say, like, see, like, rappers are the reason why more little white boys from the suburbs are comfortable calling, you know what I'm saying, each other nigga and everything else. Even though I think that's slightly misguided, because it ignores how, what, Toya? I think we're on the same page here.
No, finish the thought and I'll let you know if it's what I'm thinking. If not, I'll add something to it.
Because it ignores how, like, they were already comfortable using the word in other contexts, like, already. Like,
ding, ding, ding.
Like, I think the idea that it's like, oh, now white kids, y'all making white kids feel comfortable using it. I'm telling you, I have horror stories of me being just around a whole bunch of white kids, and people forgetting that I'm there, and the words that they use. I ain't gonna tell the story today, but it's like there's already a comfortability there, but on face value, right? That's it. That sounds like a legitimate argument, right? Like, we're being fair. We're being fair. This is what you call switch side. This is what you call making sure that you're coming from a balanced perspective. This is not a one-sided dialogue. This is not one-sided conversation, right? Now, now those were famous people making these arguments, but I want to hear from some regular niggas. So there's some niggas. We're gonna hear from some niggas on TikTok, right? So, like, those are like the most intelligent ways. We got the conscious way that we hear the argument, right? So now we're gonna hear the argument from the perspective of just niggas on TikTok. How do niggas on TikTok articulate their beef with us using the N-word? So let's start with this dude. I don't really know his name, but he getting some hype, even though I disagree with him. Let's get it.
Black people should not be using the N-word. It's a negative connotation. We black people are very, very unique. We're smart, we're intelligent. I believe that we're builders. There
Hey,
is
shout
no
out to
such
everybody in
thing
the
as
comments,
flipping
too,
wrong.
while we getting the
And
video going. Lorraine asked the question, why do we want to keep having this conversation? To me, it's always been a matter of the young versus the old, or the young heads versus the old heads. And we're going to talk about that in a bit. But we started off explaining why we want to have this conversation, which is that people are highly critical, either implicitly or explicitly to us, about our use of the word nigga on this show. So it's really just our time to kind of peel back some layers on our relationship to the word and the scholarship. Because we always coming to educate, you know what I'm saying? Always trying to come with some knowledge and some information and make everything coherent. But while we kind of refuse to just give up the word nigga. So if y'all are, here tapped in, make sure y'all hit that like, hit that love, hit that thumbs up though, so that we can know that y'all are actually rocking with the direction of the conversation that we in. But go ahead and play the clip. I see you got it pulled up.
Yeah, let's get it. All right, let's go.
Black people should not be using the N-word. It's a negative connotation. We black people are very, very unique. We're smart, we're intelligent. I believe that we're builders. There is no such thing as flipping wrong and let it be wrong for one person and then right for the next person. It's like the dumb ideology where someone says you can't be racist unless you're in power. Hate is a form of power. Well, I'm not using the N-word in a negative way. I'm not gonna lie, I struggle with not using the N-word. It's something that I'm working with God to remove from my vocabulary.
What, Calvin? You say the N-word?
It's a negative word. Is it a sin? I'm not gonna say that it's a sin, but is it uplifting your brother is the question. Is it furthering God's kingdom is the question. God loves you, friend. That's
So my nigga took it to the whole the Christian.
Took it to the church house.
He said we're not gonna call it a sin. But you know what I'm saying? Like he obviously like is it uplifting? All right, I see you, bro. Like, okay, I got you. I got you.
I don't know.
No, I mean, but like this is the thing, right? These are I didn't know there was a Christian lean to any of these.
I didn't either.
But this is at least all the positions are being heard, right? All the positions
Understood.
being heard. If you have not hit that like button, make sure y'all hit that like button. What we are doing right now, we are being fair, right? We're making sure that that the correct positions, that everybody's having an opportunity to be heard. All these different black people, right? We got one more. We got one more nigga that we're gonna hear from real quick, and then we're gonna get into the chop ups position on this N-word. Toya, are you ready?
I'm prepared.
Okay.
Go ahead and play that last clip.
So this is the last brother that we're gonna. I think this brother British. So we're gonna see
The
how
diaspora. We need everybody's take on the N-word. So why not?
Everybody's. We rock with the diaspora like that. So this is the last one argument that we're gonna see, and then we're gonna get into these arguments and lay out our position. Let's go.
I'm gonna be straight up. We need to stop using the N-word. I think first of all, the rappers need to stop putting it in.
Hold on. All right, and let's get it. Hold on. All right, now let's get it.
I'm gonna be straight up. We need to stop using the N-word. I think first of all, the rappers need to stop putting it in their songs because that gives people an easy excuse to just use it. Secondly, I think that black people need to stop using it towards other black people. The fact that this has happened so much has caused people to think it's a normal word, like it's a greeting or something. Like, I don't think that's right. If you know the meaning of that word, you should not be using that towards anybody. The fact that it's even become normalized, it hurts. A word like that should not be normalized whatsoever. Once you start to educate yourself about the history behind that word, if you're black and you're still using it towards your friends, then I don't know what's wrong with you. Because now every time I hear that word, it reminds me of stuff I've watched and stuff I've listened to. And I don't like it. I'm not going to sit here and say I've never used the word, but once I educated myself, I stopped. Thank you.
Toya, you look unamused. Like you looked.
I'm just taking it in. I'm hearing different perspectives. I don't think. Yeah, I'm just taking it in. That is all I'm doing.
I think what I feel like is crazy is when people be like, once you learn the history of this word, I'm trying to figure out at what point do we not know why black people are in America? Like there's no confusion about that, right? Like even the fact that we're called black is come from the same reason of why we call. Yeah, I mean, so like I think the assumed ignorance of black people, and that's the only reason why we use that word. I take a little offense to that. You know what I mean? Like, where else? Like, you know what I'm saying? Because like, really, where else could it have come from? So those were a few of the positions, just so we clear on what those arguments are specifically. We got arguments about the historical context, right? We got arguments about how no other races use slurs or use that type of language to define themselves. And it's funny that Vlad was speaking on it. Like, my nigga, like,
sure.
Yeah, all right. We got we embrace being the lesser, right? Nothing but a nigga, right? It gets reduced to that. We kind of hearing arguments about how language can uphold oppression, right? How titles should reflect dignity. The terms that we use to talk about our brother.
Affirming.
Right. It should be affirming. Those types of things. Now, before we get into cooking them arguments, I do want to lay out a few limitations that our position is going to have, just to be fair, right? Because this is a multifaceted, a very complicated conversation. So we want to lay out specifically the limitations to our position. The first is there are generational limits, right? I want to be fair to the older generation. A lot of what I'm saying is critical of my people is people that are like Generation X and younger. You feel me? So because Generation X was the first generation that lived in a post-civil rights society. They every generation prior to Generation X, like literally saw segregation and lived through some era of segregation. After like Generation X, from their beginning towards the end, like that's all post segregation. So I'm more willing to hear the criticism and respect the criticism for the older generations in terms of how that term was used, because it had more of a societal normalcy to it, right? Like
it stung a little bit more because when nobody it wasn't no record scratch when niggas was like, nigga, get at it. Like, it just was like,
right.
He told your ass to move, or you got to get up from this guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to get off this bus. You know what I mean? But
like, or what? Like in life, it was like, how about I make y'all some nigga pies, right? Like it wasn't like, oh my God, did she just call us? Right. No, it was like, you know what? About 5 miles. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Right. So generationally,
shout out to Life, the funniest, saddest movie on the planet.
Funniest, saddest movie on the. It was crazy how they did that, right? So there are generational limits to our arguments. We are not like this. These are just this from the old to the older perspective. This is just insight for y'all. Right, to how we see it, not having to endure what y'all went through. So we want to make sure we respect that. The second limit is this is an intra-racial conversation. As Toya has pointed out multiple times, we are specifically talking about how black people use the term, period. How black people use the term, whether or not we should use it. And then the third limit is the link between respectability and survivability, right? We are not advocating that you just go out, you going to work and be like, nigga this, nigga that, man, I ain't fucking with that. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
We're at like, we're talking about it from an intellectual standpoint, but at the same time, you gotta, move, like you gotta move through society in ways that help you survive.
Protect yourself. Don't be walking around here like, nah, I heard this very much woke leftist podcast that told me to pull up with my boss and be like, what's up, my nigga? Like, nobody told you to say that. Nobody ever told you to do that. Nobody ever told you to go to the meeting and be like, these niggas just don't support me and what I'm trying to do. And so I'm not finishing the project on time. Nobody told you. So think about it. Context matters. You know what I'm saying? Like, who you are, where you are matters. And it's not a question of respectability. I think it's like the plug has said, survivability is for you to make it through the day to day. But it's not necessarily you being any lesser version of yourself if you decide not to, go to church and call the preacher some niggas. It's okay. Right.
Now, with that being said, with all the respectability that we've shown towards the opposing side and the disclaimers and limitations we just laid out, let's get to the smoke. All right. Are you ready, Toya?
I'm with you, my brother. Let's talk.
Let's do this. Okay. The first argument we about to kill, and it's the one that's made the most, and it's one that's the strongest. But the worst argument that's made is the argument about historical context. I'm gonna be for real. Right, that like the argument of, well, you gotta understand the origins, you gotta know the history. We already kind of pointed out that, like, nigga, we know the history. Like, that is not something that's lost on us as we deploy the term. But what we've done with the term, when you hear people try to make this argument about like not being able to reclaim it, is what we've done is something that's not even unique. You know what I'm saying? This whole y'all can't reclaim it. That's going against like the laws of like language and culture, period. Right?
Absolutely.
And now, I mean, you could speak to that as a with your master's in rhetoric.
Yes, sure. Like, I mean, no, I agree, right? I mean, I think when it's not only my master's in rhetoric, it's also the intersections of things like sociology and anthropology, the study of people in groups as they've connected and build bridges, as they become community and build community and determine who's inside and outside of that. That type of nomenclature, that type of verbiage has been used to overcome a lot of what the history has created. It's been used to navigate and to recognize and to peep and to build relationality even within a lot of the violence that people want to talk about. So that history is important, but it's also only important insofar as we see how we've evolved and navigated it while keeping it at the center of how we understand ourselves and who we are. You know what I'm saying? So, like, just don't be lazy, right? Because like, we get it. You know what I'm saying? But there's also some complex things that have happened with that word. I also think it's important to add that Black people are innovators of language in and of itself. When we were having or thinking about this conversation about the N-word, I brought up the term or the phrase yo, and how yo specific to, and we got a lot of friends from Baltimore, so I immediately thought of them, how they have been able to use yo as a pronoun to almost create genderless language, because they be like, hey, did you see yo was tripping when they was in class talking about this,
Yo
and that.
was tripping, yeah.
Yo was bugging, yo was over here talking about this and that, and yo don't even know what's really good. Nah, I gotta get with yo. So yo called me, like, they literally, and I mean, anybody who is from the DMV can attest to this. So if we got any listeners up in here that can attest to this, back me up. But I bring up this example just to talk about the beautiful and elaborate ways that we have historically used language to communicate with each other, and not only build connections and relationships by, redeploying the meaning of words, but literally tackling the gender and pronoun issue without even realizing it.
We've been past that.
To talk to each other. You know what I'm saying? So we're so much better than we give ourselves credit for, and that is because we innovate, we shape, we evolve, we create out of whatever position.
Now, take notes. It's the chop up, so y'all gonna learn something. You feel me? What y'all need to understand about the N-word, right, as we call it, or the word nigga, is that it is and I've been trying to make sure I've been pronouncing it right all day. It's dactic. It is a dactic word. That means that it is the meaning of the word, right? How you understand the word depends on who is talking, who they talking to, and where they are, etc. It's extremely subjective to the person that's using it, what it is that they trying to purvey, right? So when we be like, yo, I'm not feeling them niggas, right? Mm-hmm. The feelings being purveyed, and we're gonna talk more about those feelings later, but the feelings being purveyed is straight up saying, like, those niggas are niggas we don't fuck with, right? Because you can tell from the energy, right? But when the niggas like, oh, did you see them niggas? Those are some niggas that we need to take a look at, right? Those are some niggas that maybe should have some admiration, right? We should take notes on. We talking about niggas, but we talking about niggas specifically in a particular context. You have to be doing like some type of gymnastics to tell yourself that when I'm like, Toya, my nigga, like, that I'm calling her a slave, that I'm dehumanizing her.
Right, come on, it's a reach.
Easily, like one of the longest reaches, and this is why I say we work backwards to push this criticism, because if we look at how the term is being used, we recognize and see that it's not being deployed in any context relevant to slavery or white supremacy or racism. The only thing that is common is the word itself. That's it, right? And it ain't even the word, because we say nigga, we don't say nigger. right? Which is why we made sure to say that A means something. That's us. That's
Absolutely.
us. That's us creating meaning. So that's why when Roland Martin says, "Well, how you gonna be conscious and you using the language of the oppressor?" My nigga, you said that in English. You're not an English individual.
Yeah.
As descendants of enslaved Africans, our general language is the language of the oppressor. This is the king's English.
Stop it.
Wasn't my king. my people had chiefs and shit, right?
Exactly.
Chieftains and priestesses and priests. Like, that's how we rock. So don't talk to me about the oppressor's language when, like, literally every word that we speak from the time that we're born is in and of itself the oppressor's language to you.
And also, I mean, not to mention, we, again, because we have fluidity and elasticity with language, made sure to put the A, because if you do the ER, then we know, you know, how you coming out the hip on us. You know what I'm saying? That we've created a tiebreaker so that there isn't confusion about when there's attempts to build community, and there are moments where the colonizers' the framer's intent is what we call it in debate, the one who created the term, when it's being used how it's supposed to be used. We built in a tiebreaker, so there's not any confusion about when you are attempting to embody the colonizer and when you are attempting to use the phrase in a way that represents what Black people have done with the words and with the language. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's built in. So to create confusion when something is aggressively clear is willful ignorance in a lot of ways.
Willful ignorance. That's a great term. So again, what y'all need to take from this, what destroys this origins argument, is that it is a deictic term. That means that as it's deployed, you have to have some context of the individual, the situation, and the audience to understand how the term is being used, right? But what make it even worse, would really kill the argument to you, and this is like, I feel like this should be something that's a lot more obvious than what it is. Mm-hmm. And it's that the argument that the origin of the word means that we're demeaning ourselves is actually logically fallacious. It is a specific logical fallacy known as a etymological fallacy. And it's defined here as the faulty argument that the true or proper meaning of a word is its oldest or original meaning. Because the meanings of word, let's be clear. The meanings of words change over time. No.
You don't say.
So when we say, nigga, it ain't the same as, no, because meanings in words change over time. A word's contemporary definition, the definition that is utilized currently, can't be established from its origin. The best indicator of a word's meaning is its current use, not its derivation. I know I ain't pronounced that right, but you know what I'm saying?
I don't even know what word you were going for, and I can't see it, so I got you.
And so, again, what I want to repeat, the best indicator of a word's meaning is its current use.
Yeah, this is the reason why people don't walk around and say, I feel gay. This is the reason why people don't call cigarettes FAGs. Right? They're just 1,000 explanations for why we have moved to understand the current use of the word and govern ourselves accordingly, right? So, like, we do it with other words. Why we've lashed on the nigga and been like, oh my God, this means what it meant 400 years ago, 380 years ago. It just don't.
Even 80, even 80 years ago.
It just don't.
Like, I remember when we was kids and we first learned that gay meant happy. It was like, you gay? Are you happy? Are you happy? We literally was changing the meaning of happy to match our contextual and contemporary understanding of the term gay.
Absolutely.
So why is it that all of a sudden, when Black people are doing this thing with language that everybody else has done throughout history, no, we can't do that, right?
Absolutely.
A great example that's used here that from the Oxford English Dictionary is records that the word black has a difficult history and was sometimes confused in Old English with a similar word which meant shining or white. But speakers would be ill-advised nowadays to use black to mean white. So if we even go back even further, these terms have even others. So let's go back even further. Let's go back to when black meant shiny. Let's do that, right? Is that fair? You feel me? So all of
Right.
these arguments, about its origin is caught up in fallacious logic, in that the purpose, the reason why we think so fallaciously when it comes to black people is because we're buying into a lot of the perception and rhetoric that ties black people to very specific meanings that we did not rock with, that's been placed on us, right?
You're right.
We're not allowed to push back against language like everybody else. You feel me? We not allowed to show these types of things, and that's why I feel like one thing that we recognize when you hear is the terminology. Ice-T said this in the song "Straight Up Nigga." It was like, everybody is a nigga to a nigga, right?
Right.
And only niggas get that. You feel me? Only niggas get that. Anything more you want to add to why the historical context argument fails in saying why we shouldn't use that term, Toya?
No, everything you said makes sense to me. Donnell clarified that the word we were going for was derivation. Root word there is to derive, or as explained in the comments, have something that's come to be. I just didn't know what word you meant in the first place. So shout out to Chop Nation for always cleaning us up and making sure we tight and right as we talk through these things. Also, just I'm a word freak, so etymology is my jam. I really enjoy the study of words, the study of language, the study of how then we get different iterations of words and language from that. So, shout out to this etymological exchange we've done to really break.
And y'all gotta be patient with us niggas. Like we some niggas from Kansas City. Toya's from Missouri.
I'm from Missouri.
I said Kansas City.
You lingered on Kansas too long. You let it sit out there. You gave a misperception, and we had to clean it. But carry on.
Like, okay, because your accent is different from niggas across the water. Okay, anyway, moving on. Moving on.
Sure.
So all right, that kills that. It's an etymological fallacy. Like, nobody else is told that they can't read, that they can't reclaim words or do different stuff with words. So we moving on from that. Okay, that argument is dead and done. The next argument that we going for that needs to be addressed is the no other races use slurs, use those type of terms. Nonsense. Now I've definitely seen your face scrunch up when you first heard that. You feel me? Like, what is it? There seems to be an annoyance that comes from when you hear that argument. Talk to that.
Well, no, I really kind of already spoke to it, which is the fact that even if they don't use those types of terms against each other, they definitely use nigga and refer to each other as that term, for better or for worse. I also am not within their communities, but I'm almost certain that there are certain demeaning terms that they use toward each other. For example, I know for a fact that the colorism that exists, that's largely based and rooted in anti-blackness, by the way, is, creates language that allow people to identify as darker as lighter, you know what I'm saying? Or, the terminology used to identify somebody as fat. There is damaging language. There is non-affirming language in every language that is rooted in a fucked up perception of who those people are. You know what I'm saying? So I'll go back to my example of colorism. I think that is a great example of how some really fucked up shit can be used within the community, and intra-community, those people don't necessarily get all angry and upset with each other for conversing with people that way or calling each other that, because they understand how the word moves around within that culture. So I'm just not in those cultures, so I don't pretend to know the slang. But I'm not gonna pretend that is probably not a reality, if that makes sense.
So no, it makes total sense, but that's why we also ignore that. Like, if we was just literally just saying that other groups throughout history, terms and what they call themselves have shifted, then making that assumption about other groups would be a lie, right? And I think the one that stands out the most to me is if you understand the origins of the term white. Like, most people assume that, like, white is what these people have always been, but that wouldn't be, that's the furthest thing from the truth. We could argue that at a certain time, calling a European man, calling him white would have been like calling him a bitch. Right? Let me share this real quick with you, Toya. So, no, you can see it on the what's the name. Let me get this up here. An article from the Smithsonian that's kind of breaking down how where these terms came from. Before the mid 1600s, there's no evidence that the English referred to themselves as being white people. This concept did not occur until 1613, when the English society first encountered and contrasted themselves against East Indians through colonial pursuits. So we see that the origins of why Europeans started calling themselves white was to push back against, okay, we different from the darker Asians that we trading with, that we coming into contact with. This is where it gets interesting. Even then, there was not a large body of people who considered themselves white, as we know the term today. From about the 1550s to 1600, white was exclusively used to describe elite English women, because the whiteness of skin signaled that they were persons of high social class who did not go outside to labor. However, the term white did not refer to Englishmen, because the idea that men did not leave their homes to work could signal that they were lazy, sick, or unproductive.
Sure.
So, in the context of like a negative
don't
term.
tell me. Wait. So the term white changed over time? Because that's not how white exists. I just wanted to see if that's what you were suggesting. But I get back to you.
Hold on. And this is what it meant for a European man to be called white. It signaled that they were lazy, sick, or unproductive.
Right.
Ain't it crazy how that's what they use to refer to black people, and like black meaning lazy and black meaning unproductive and all of this, or nigga means ignorant. Nigga mean.
Or let's take it a step further. I mean, we do have people who, you know, because they have to be so antagonistic and so anti and counterculture, scream out white power and white pride. White lives matter, right? They've taken and redeemed whiteness. White is a symbol of affirmation for white people. Notice, white people don't get offended when you're not like, hey, you're white. They're not like, hey, I'm Swedish American. I am German American. I am whatever. They don't get offended. You want to know why? Because they have claimed whiteness. They've taken it from its negative connotations and decided to adapt it, right? And identify with it as a term of collectiveness, as a way to kind of identify and separate themselves from non-white people.
Right.
They use it as a metric for who belongs and who does not. So It's really funny if you really spend the time to pick apart the way that they use language, the same way you try to pick apart how niggas use language.
How niggas use it, yeah.
We've arrived at the same conclusions. We've taken terms that used to be negative and decided to make them positive and to create community bonds, connections, and relationships vis-a-vis that particular language.
And they did it to their benefit. When niggas is reclaiming that term to our benefit, to be like my brother, my family, or sometimes knowing who the ops is, we don't fuck with them niggas. That's how it goes sometimes. Yeah. When we doing that to our benefit, all we are doing is displaying the same level of culture, the same level of evolution of philosophy and language that we've seen throughout history. This shows the level of ignorance that we have to these terms when we're willing to sit back and say no other group calls themselves these things, when we only understand the term white one way because of the evolution that we saw. Like it says here, as the concept of being white evolved, the number of people considered white would grow as people wanted to push back against the increasing numbers of people of color due to emancipation and immigration. Whiteness is constantly shifting boundaries, separating those who are entitled to have certain privileges from those who exploitation and vulnerability to violence is justified for their not being white. When they had to draw clear lines in the sand on who's who and who's not, they didn't care what white used to mean. Oh, white used to mean that you was always in the house. Oh, it don't mean that now. White mean we're not those people, right? and we also see that in who's accepted into whiteness and who's not. When we talk about European immigrants like the Irish, like the Italians, who they weren't considered white in Europe, come to the United States, lynch a couple niggas, and now you fit in, you know what I'm saying, you fit within that category. So the idea that these notions of identity are static and that there's only one way that we can understand them is bullshit. And it's only some shit that we apply to niggas. So when Roland Martin says, we need to deprogram our mind, that deprogramming looks like being okay with the term nigga, because knowing that I'm not letting them have full control over how definitions function and how that shit operate. That's what deprogramming really look like, right? Because another example of that, real quick, Toya, is what we see with the term Hispanic.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the term Hispanic.
Talk
Again, these people are making claims. Other people don't use derogatory terms. Hispanic is controversial among Latinos who view it as a government-imposed label. The U.S. federal government created the term and first used it in the 1980 census to ensure a more accurate count of individuals in the United States who are either Latin American or Spanish heritage. The term Hispanic is an ethnic label, not a race of people.
That part.
It's a term that was given to them. Controversial.
It centers their colonizers, right? It's the same like redundancy that you see where you're like, they don't get called this, they don't get called the derogatory. They do. Like literally the formal way that they are addressed vis-a-vis like literal institutional systematic forms, like institutions, is as Hispanic, which is derogatory in and of itself. Right? Like Spain colonized the Americas.
Right.
A lot of terrible things went down Central America, up here in the Americas.
Latin-speaking countries.
Give you another example if that's not enough. A lot of Filipinos don't like being called Filipinos because King Philip colonized that particular area, so they identify as Pinoy.
We can keep
right
going.
Because even that phraseology, that terminology, the language we use toward them in and of itself is loaded with derogatory language. So while you up here talking about anybody else, no, literally the systems and institutions that have made it a way to identify these people, derogatorily talk about them and refer to them every single day.
Right. So
walking contradiction.
So Toya, the question is, so why is it that other people don't? Why are so niggas so quick to use that as an argument to try to demean and try to talk shit about niggas? Like
because we the hot shit.
Toya is literally called Hispanic Heritage Month. We are in the midst right now of Hispanic Heritage Month.
Every September.
From what, September 15th to October 15th?
Through October, yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's controversial. Right? So again, we hearing these conversations, we're hearing these arguments, but when we actually hold these arguments to the fire, right? Like they don't hold up. They don't hold up. The best arguments be the ones about respectability, because it's like you can't just be going to work to call nigga. But these main, like these moral high ground arguments that niggas make, they not valid. They not valid.
Hey, hit that thumbs up if you've been rocking with us and kind of learning some new things about the language and the in-betweens, the gray areas of the term nigga, and also components of it we're not talking about, because that's all we doing. It's trying to drop knowledge. We ain't saying you need to go walk around using the word nigga, but if you do, we want you to feel better about making that decision, largely because of these weird rules that only Black people are forced to use when it comes to terms of endearment or just ways we use words and language to begin with. So that's how we coming at it.
So, getting into the next argument. We at
58, by the way.
Okay, so got you. We got two more, and then you know what I'm saying, we out of here. Getting into the next argument is the argument that usage of the of the word nigga is a reflection of self-hate and that it can't be reclaimed. Right now, we've just shown how. That pretty much ignores how language works. So we know that that's not necessarily true. But why would one argue that it's a reflection of self-hate? Why do you, like, from your perspective, Toya, like when you first hear somebody be like, well, you calling yourself a nigga, that means that you don't respect yourself, my sister. Mm-hmm. What is your initial reaction to that?
I mean, I guess I get what you're trying to say, because again, it has that twisty, windy road back into slavery. Yeah. But I guess I really don't understand what that means if I'm saying my nigga, if I'm you. It doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't resonate, just because there's nothing negative about how I think about or understand myself. And 9 times out of 10, the person I'm talking to, when I'm utilizing that language. So it gets me where we started, which is that context, because of the nature of the word, will always matter. It's deictic. Which means that we have to be mindful of the person using it, the context it's used in, the place, the space,
all of that matters.
Form and the content.
Hit that like button
at one time. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I don't hate myself, and I think that is a weird thing to say in relationship to the words and the language that I've chosen to use in that moment.
I think this is the argument that requires the most mental gymnastics, Because you just sat there and watched me look at my dog and be like, my nigga, boy, I'm so proud of you, boy. Like, matter of fact, my grandma hates it. But my pops, he refers to me as his nigga. Like, my pops be like, my nigga, that's my nigga. Like, and my grandma is like, don't call him that. Don't call him that. But it's like, but you know, I feel a sense of pride, like, right? Because when he's saying that like he's watching me grow up, watching me become a man and all of that. Like I've checked the boxes that he wanted me to check. You know what I'm saying? Like and so when he's saying like I'm his nigga, like I would literally have to work backwards to be like, Father, I take offense to it. I would have to ignore his relationship with the term, our relationship. You know what I'm saying? Conversations that we had. I would have to ignore all these things that make sense in order for that to in order for that to work. And so what I always go ahead.
I mean, just in terms of working backwards, I think it also just completely contradicts what we've learned about, for example, reading and reading comprehension, not just reading the words on the page, but the comprehension of what you've read. Is that if you're at all confused about the way that any words have been deployed, you should look at the context clues around it to figure out exactly what it means, right? Like that is literally how we teach young people to learn new words, learn new language, to understand context, tone, mood, is to say, okay, I hate you has been said. But if somebody says that in response to somebody jumping out and scaring them from behind a wall, we know that it's not literal hate.
I don't really mean I hate you, yeah.
It is an affectionate disdain for the fact that you caught me off guard, and we'll probably be fast friends here in 2 seconds once my heart starts beating too fast. Like, It's not hard to understand. So again, we've used this phrase 1,000 times. We'll use it 1,007 times before the show is over. The mental gymnastics it takes for you to pluck something out of context and to root it into something that I guess you're still working through or dealing with says just a whole lot about your aptitude to have racial literacy, what George Lee would call the ability to read and write language and race at the same time, right? You are really kind of lacking in that area if you can't make those connections in real time.
And I want to introduce a psychological term that we kind of deployed while we was in debate, and it's called affect. Affect. And affect is a more complex way to understand emotions and feelings, right? Affect really describes an experience and the range of emotions, right? And whether and the bodily responses to that experience and how that's shared amongst a particular group, right? And so we understand the term nigga through affect, right? Nobody sat us down when the first time we used it. Nobody gave us a definition. We saw it being used. We understood how it was being deployed, and then we apply like through that affect, right? So watching, like, so when Pops was like, all right, hey, that nigga over there, watching Pops body language to understand, okay, niggas, right? But then when he see me, my nigga, watching his body language, showing that love, okay, nigga. The word is the same, but the affect being communicated speaks to a more positive experience or a negative experience. Because again, if nigga is multifaceted, it's both good and bad, right? And so affect help us understand it from that point. That and this is why I think we feel we have the biggest beef with Democrats, because even though they agree with us and they traffic in empathy. Right, the way that they think about how they should relate is I feel y'all. I feel where y'all coming from. I understand. I see y'all struggle, but our response is we don't feel y'all though, because even though you can deploy the language and you can speak to the issue, the feelings is so like when Hillary said she got hot sauce in her bag. The affect wasn't there. It didn't hit.
Exactly.
Because the affect wasn't there. You feel me?
Yeah.
So so that's one way to understand that. So that idea that it's a reflection of self-hate literally ignores all the range of emotions and the collection of emotions that's associated with that term. And so
I also want to counter that experience with, for example, the affect that was felt when Barack Obama was in the White House. And I think this was around Trayvon Martin time, this and that. We had a little young black boy go to the White House, and you know, he reached down that picture of him touching Barack Obama waves or whatever, like touching the top of his head, how that resonated with so many people. And that's because that spoke a lot, right? Without even having words connected to that. It was affective representation that, I mean, and two niggas was at the center of it, right? Like what it meant for two black men, where they were doing what they were doing in the face of what the country was dealing with, in the face of this young black man being killed. It conjured up a moment and an experience that I don't know that if we had a little white boy go to the White House and touch Joe Biden's bald spot, that it would create the same affective moment of wow. You know what I'm saying? Look at what's possible. Look at how far people have come. Look at the developments in the chat. Like it just wouldn't communicate the same thing, right? You can't ignore that component, that stickiness that is created in moments where black people are present and affect is also created.
Right. So when people make the argument that it's a reflection of self-hate, right? That is them interpolating racial connotation onto the term as opposed to them seeing that like play out and extrapolating from it. You know what I'm saying? We're writing, like, again, this is black people. We're injecting whiteness into places where it don't need to be. The last part I feel like to me is the deepest. Right? And hold on, let me make sure we good. Okay.
We also got a question in the chat that I want to make sure we get to too. A couple things.
Let's get to that first before we get to this last part before we close out.
Okay, well, a couple of things I want to talk about before I even get to the question. LaRon brings up the word queer used to be a slur. And I think that is another great example of a word that is in the middle of its evolution. I was actually listening to an NPR conversation about a month or two ago that was getting into the word queer. And as much as it's becoming more popular amongst a certain demographic or a certain kind of age group of LGBTQIA folks, that older particular people don't really have an affinity for it because of the violence, because they have vivid memories of being chased in the bathrooms and beat up and called that slur, because they've also always understood it as something that they weren't allowed to do. And so when you look at the way that queer folks, black queer folks, for example, understand themselves as queer, it is now more recently understood as, an existence in between the kind of non-restricted areas, the ones that are not overdetermined by gender or expectation of sexual relationship, of sexual fluidity, of gender fluidity, right? It speaks to so many things that are true of that experience. So queer is one of those interesting words that I think is moving and constantly shifting, and over time will exist as a fully reclaimed word, even though right now it does have some baggage to it, just like we talking about nigga, because of the generational gaps in between it. Terry Keith asked the question, if you own that word, why are you mad when other people say it or call you that? And I'm assuming other white people, non-black people. Why does it strike frustration or anger when you get called out from other people? Plug, what's your take on your response to why, if we have reclaimed the word, then why it creates offense when other people use it?
Well, because I think that, I mean, we kind of murdered this position earlier, but if I need to get redundant, I'll be redundant for those who don't have the energy to go back.
I mean, or just popped in late,
Okay,
We're going to assume it's an educational question of goodwill. So why is it that I get it. Because especially in YouTube world, it's hard to do. But why is it that you feel like that you feel affirmed in flashing on niggas who call you a nigga when they ain't niggas? Why does that happen?
Like so two things. As the first thing, as we pointed out, it's a deictic word, which means that who's using it is just as important as the context that they're using it in and who they deploying it to, right? And that means that if we look at the historical context, that again, when the word nigger first came to the English colonies, it only meant slave labor. That means in the American...
We never said that shit didn't matter. We never said that shit didn't matter. It always matters. Right. It's always going to be a fundamental part of the utility of the word.
Right. So not being able to separate that history doesn't mean that it can't be reclaimed, right? But when it's being deployed by certain individuals, then it's relying on that history, right? They're invoking that history when they use that term specifically. That's why people still use it in that derogatory fashion. Now, again, understand language is fluid. That means that it can be a negative and it can be a positive. As a black person, I could be saying nigga and mean it negatively, right? But I'm not deploying I'm not deploying and invoking politics of race and slavery. But when it's used and deployed by white individuals, they are invoking that politic, which is dangerous physically and psychologically to the well-being of black people. So that reclamation is, again, a intra-racial thing, but we still have to deal with the outside world. And this is where even Ronald Judy, one of the people that helped me kind of understand these things, deploys W.E.B. Du Bois and that double consciousness. We have to understand how we use the word and how we deploy the word, and then how the word is used in society and how it's deployed in society. So that's why.
And also, I'll just add this: when I'm saying this nigga over here, I'm also never. I'm more likely than not, always never like that slave over there.
Never, ever.
Nobody ever means that.
Yeah.
This person who has frustrated me, disappointed me, pissed me off. But, and this is where we also need to kind of massage in, Judy's understanding of nigga and all of its infinite things that it can mean, is because when I'm saying that, I'm not connotating it in the ways that, and like Plug just explained, are without it's dialectic, the D word, without its deictic context. Right? Yes. Andrea said it best. It's a question of interracial use. We reclaimed it for ourselves. And the biggest problem that people have when they want to be like, well, why can't you say it? But when you get mad when we say it, is because you have a problem with ownership. You have a problem with the fact that niggas have reclaimed something. Terry that says you are still subjugated by the same forces that named you that. I don't feel subjugated when Dominique calls me a nigga. So I don't know what you mean by that. What subjugation am I feeling or experiencing that is actualized when somebody who does not mean slave uses it toward me? I feel disrespected when somebody's trying to demean me and disrespect me and use it as a way to peg me or knock me down a peg, or to kind of call me into the moment by attempting to be aggressively unnecessary. You don't have, again, I'm gonna use the rule of thumb. If you don't have black grandparents, you don't get to call me a nigga. And I would prefer if you have 4 of them motherfuckers. So if that's not what you got, you don't need to call me that. If nobody in your bloodline was ever a slave, you absolutely don't get to call a nigga. But I feel like, that's light. That's good with the gloves on. Right. But I draw firm lines on who I feel like is able to use that language as a metric of exchange to either build community, negotiate community, check community. Some people already know off rip, we just don't have communal origins with. So that's not language you get to use with me. And that's the reason that I'm able to navigate the subjugation, because it's all about context. And if you're not willing to understand context, then again, there's an investment in willful ignorance that we can't help you with. Right. Everybody can use the word nigga, but results may vary.
And the last thing I'm gonna say to address Terry Keefe there is that what you bringing up is non-unique. Regardless of whether or not we choose to reclaim the word or we choose to demonize it, those same forces we are still subjugated under. Right.
Shout
so
out
I think
to Terry. They said they black. So I mean, hopefully this is a moment of reconciliation and understanding, at least perspective on the word nigga, because I don't want to undermine your experience with the word either. We started out the conversation there,
right? But to be clear though, like that subjugation is non-unique, regardless of the relationship we choose to have with the word. Changing our relationship with the word doesn't lift the subjugation. But this is actually a great transition into this last point as we get ready to get up out of here. Language is the site of resistance. So the argument that we typically hear is that language is, like in this case, language is what's used to subjugate a people. Like the term is deployed as a way to dehumanize certain individuals. But what we want y'all to leave here with is understanding that set, like, language isn't just a place of oppression. It's a battlefield where we actually take place against resisting that form, the dehumanization that we argue come from that word. So what we need to be clear about, right, is resistance. The problem is that we only view resistance as being against whatever white people is for, or running up on white people like in some form of violence, and that's like ridiculous to look at, right? If we can agree, if we can argue that the term, that deploying the term nigger had like psychological, like an effect, like had a real life effect, then we can also recognize in that reclaiming it also produces some form of material benefit and some form of psychological well-being. And the reason why we know this is, and again, we're gonna get we're gonna get back into the evidence real quick, and by really tapping into Ronald Judy's article to help us understand what we mean by this site of resistance. Is, let me point out, so like a lot of the criticism that we saw about the term had to do with the way it's deployed in hip hop. So but what Ronald Judy argues is that the way that it's deployed in hip hop is actually the best example of how it is a site of resistance. So what he argues here is that moments in which rap's appropriation by the transnational economy appears to signal its comprehension in diluting, hardcore is reclaimed as the source. For example, KRS Run DMC, Naughty by Nature. Today we could say like drill music, right? So like the Chief Keef and like all of these, right? Like that rebellion comes back. When Public Enemy released Don't Believe the Hype in 1989, they were marking how popular culture itself is technology of government, right? So when we say niggas is sold out, industry plants, right? That's how pop culture is technology of government. But what Judy argues is that nigga defines authenticity as adaptation to the force of commodification. So whether or not you a real nigga is dependent upon how you push back against the ways in which you are really commodified in society, right? What he goes on to say is that hardcore rap in its formal and rhetorical strategies is akin to the blues as understood by Ralph Ellison, an oppositional cultural movement that is thoroughly symbolic in the face of political domination. He says nigga is not an essential identity, strategic or otherwise, but rather indicates the historicity of indeterminate identity. So when we say everybody is a nigga to a nigga, what that means is that what we've been able to how we've been able to conceptualize nigga is we don't even think about race when we deploy it. Because you got white niggas, black niggas, Mexican niggas, Asian niggas. So we've taken this term that meant this very specific thing, slave property. And like through the evolution of our culture, through the evolution of our resistance, we've literally turned this thing and exploded it. Right? We've done philosophy greater and better than any of the philosophers that came out of Greece or Rome. And it was just through our actions and through our resistance. So what he says is, in other words, nigga poses an existential problem that concerns itself with what it means or how is it possible to be human. Now let me preach for a second to you. How do we get to that point? How do we get to a point where what it means to be a nigga is a question of what it means to be human? That is because what the dehumanization that we speak of when we say that term was deployed, everything that we've done since we've been here all the way up until this point and reclaiming it has shown that dehumanization did not work. The flexing of our culture, right? The forms of our the way that we even with as the face of popular culture, the ways that rap is still able to create and inspire and evolve, right? And to pull and create different ways that resistance looks like, even through its commodification, shows that humanity at its core can't be denied. So when y'all try to tell us that we can't use that term in that way, our humanity tells us that yes, the fuck we can. That's a part of language. That's a part of culture. So the question of what it means to be a nigga is essentially at its heart the question of what it means to be human. The last part that we're gonna get in with Judy is as he explains it here. In these terms, the question of nigga authenticity is ontological question, a question of being, about the a priori features of human being and the structures it concerned with have to do with the habits of thought which certain types of consciousness are possible. As such, the question of nigga authenticity is not a moral question, but is about the very possibility of being human. It is a strictly existential matter. So these people who were dehumanized are using the same term to dehumanize themselves, or to be dehumanized, to actually create camaraderie, to create love, to create kinship. What is more human than that? Go ahead, Toya.
I mean, no, I'm looking at, Terry's arguments in the comments. We don't own that word. Y'all messed all of that up by calling each other that, but we don't realize it. Hip hop is art and not language to be used in business matters. I would love more content or context for that particular statement. Hip hop. We
already responded to that. We literally said when he said that it's not to be used in business matters. We've already said that there's questions of respectability that are strategic, where it's not strategic to use the word, even outside of its origin and context. So that shit don't even like. So these are just bad arguments that are missing out on the comment. But you can respond to it. No, go ahead, myself.
I mean, no, it's not. I'm going through the comments. I think some context for Terry's perspective is important. I'm black and old school. And remember when the Supreme Court deemed that a fighting word, meaning that you can't call the police after getting your ass kicked for calling a black person that. And then there was a suggestion that we dehumanize ourselves. I think all of these perspectives speak to kind of the generational divide that we set up. We set up some disclaimers before this conversation started, which are largely rooted in a conversation with Generation X and beyond, because the unique kind of ways that language function for Black, old school, probably boomer or late Generation X, representatives, it kind of hits a little different. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I just, my biggest thing and my biggest take on all of this is that you claim that we dehumanize ourselves, but I don't understand why that's possible, especially when slavery is right there on the table as, the process par excellence of dehumanization that literally vis-a-vis modernity took Black people and took them from being people and turned them into niggas, right? Like really literally created them and reoriented them in this world, not as subjects, people with experiences, lives, realities, but as objects, things to be manipulated, taken advantage of, to be sold, to be kind of chained, to be, viewed as less than, right? That was the dehumanization. So us reclaiming, and I think the biggest reason why I stand by nigga is that it represents the dynamic and evolutionary and revolutionary capacity of Black people, not the limited positionality of Black people. When I look at nigga, I see
Terry, you're operating from a limited position. Go ahead.
I mean, and your insufficient answer does not make my argument invalid. It kind of does, because nothing about what you're saying. We're doing what's called non-uniquing your arguments. All these notions that we dehumanize ourselves, that we misuse or misappropriate art, that we don't recognize what we're doing to ourselves, are all just investments in kind of victim blaming. You look at Black people and you did this to yourself. You played yourself. You oppressed yourself. And that is just a really rough approach to talking about the positionality of Black people and niggas in this world, especially when, like I said, slavery is right there on the table. Anti-Blackness is right there on the table. The entire era of civil rights and Jim Crow is right there on the table. But you talk about how we dehumanize ourselves. So keep working at it. And also, if you want to debate about it, Terry Keith, since you old school, you probably got a lot to say. You show your fingers is moving quick. I wonder if your brain and your mouth move as fast, because we have debates on the show. No disrespect, respectfully, you can come on and we can talk about kind of the implications of nigga. You know what I'm saying? And really kind of wrap our minds around whatever perspective you think is supplanting the well-articulated and evidence responses we have to your questions right here. Laurent says, okay, I'm in my 20s. I'm guessing you are a plug in your 30s, 40s. So I think y'all grew up in the era of 2000 hip hop. Am I wrong? No, you're not wrong. We absolutely did. We both in our mid 30s. We're early to mid 30s right now.
Yeah.
Terry said it's not a straw man when you change my argument to something I never said. This is why we're giving you a chance to say what you said. So just let us know in the comments. The next comment you post should be, yeah, I want to debate you on it. Because if not, then we just kind of going off what you put in the comments and what you're saying not making a lot of sense. But go ahead.
And make sure y'all hit that like button, man. We about to get ready to close out. But we'll address the I ain't gonna call him a troll, but I'll address it.
I don't think he's a troll. We have different perspectives. This is a debate platform. So I'm saying, if you really have arguments, we can create a space and a platform for you to better articulate yourself if we feel like we misrepresent what you're trying to say. But
Toya, this is what I'm saying. You giving him too much credit, because everything he said has already been addressed. So it's
that's fine. That's fine. I'm still. I get what you're saying. I'm gonna still extend on my platform an opportunity for somebody to make themselves clear if you feel like we're not getting at the richness of what you're trying to articulate and explain. That's simply what I'm saying. Because even responded above. That's fine.
Even him deploying straw man and all of that, that's what I'm saying. These YouTube people, you could tell this is somebody that's not going to that's not willing to engage that far. You feel me? Because
that's fine. I mean, I get what you're saying, but I'm
right. But right now I'm being critical. I know you extended it to him, but I'm explaining why he ain't even worthy of that, even with the invitation being put out there. Because what we're seeing here is cognitive dissonance par excellence. He has a very concrete understanding. It's been placed on him what that term means. And he would rather again, point the finger at black people and say you dehumanizing yourself, then actually call into question the abilities and look at all the examples that we've used and where words and language, none of it's static. You're not gonna tell me that we can literally say that bad means good, but we can't do that with any other word. So it's just like it gets. I mean, again, it like YouTube people. Like I tell George all the time. It's like engaging with that level of argumentation is effort and futility. But we definitely appreciate the engagement and the comments and the thing and whatnot. And if you are like, if you really do feel like you can flex that muscle like that, please at the Chop Up Show on Instagram. Right, you can leave any information in the comments on this video, and we'll be more than happy to give you that work and show you how, like when it comes to going on that clock, you're not prepared. You're not prepared. So, with that being said, anything else you want to say to get ready to close it out?
I'm good. It's been great rocking with y'all. We'll holler at y'all probably on Monday. My best friend is there. The executive producer has entered the room, so the show is absolutely over. He said, "Cut it right now. We're done."
Yeah, we're done.
What's up, Hugh? You can't hear me.
Say what's up to the people. He said, "Peace."
He growing. It's crazy. Nah, but go ahead and put a pin in it. Like we said, be on the lookout for that little bell to come on, that little notification to come on. Also, make sure you subscribe. That way you know when we go live. We got some stuff to talk about in terms of Cop City coming up. Some stuff that ain't really sitting right in our spirit, and some people who've been commenting on it that we disappointed in. So stay tuned for that conversation. We'll get into that possibly on Monday. But we told y'all going into the fall, we're gonna try to double up every now and again and tap in with y'all a little bit more often. So make sure you tuned in and subscribe so y'all can stay up in here and see what's good.
All right, say peace to the people, Hugh. Peace. All right, man. We out. We gonna see y'all Monday.
Hey, big love to Terry for dropping that like too. We appreciate that. Donnell, Miss Ma'am, Andrea, Lorine. Hey, it's love to everybody up in here. Come catch us for another Dina. What's good? Come catch us for another conversation. So we'll be stay connected as the Chop Nation. Y'all don't get lost in it. Make sure y'all hit that like, hit that bell so y'all can know when we back live.
Peace.